Welcome to the latest edition of the Talkie Taka podcast. We have reconvened after a pretty long time, waiting for the dust to settle on all the leagues and the cups in the world. And just as that happens, the Euros come along. So we got busy watching. On the panel today with me, Ashwin, RK, and Radhaji. How are you, boys? City won the title again, I see. I think the Premier League is the new Farmers League, considering the biggest streak is now in England rather than anywhere else. Real won the Champions League again. Maybe the Champions League is the new Farmers League. but and United winning a trophy, getting back into Europe when all hope seemed lost, and Eric Ten Hag being rewarded by staying in place while Manchester United were verbally talking to Thomas Tuchel, which is something that he referenced recently as himself as well. But anyway, we'll go through all of that. So to begin with, what are your talkie points? Radhaji, I'll start with you because I think yours is a bit more personal than the others.
Yeah, I mean, there couldn't be any other talking moment for me. I was there. I was in Liverpool for 5 days at the end of the season to say goodbye to Klopp. The entire city was just ablaze with a party atmosphere at the end of it. Went to 3, 4 pubs, sang club songs for the 2 days leading up to the game, and then match day was incredible. Anfield just didn't give a shit about the football that was being played that day. I literally missed the starting whistle. I missed the halftime whistle. I missed the final whistle. It was just so everybody was just singing the Klopp song 90 minutes through and through. They really didn't know what was happening. People had to point out that there was a goal chance coming, or somebody from the opposition was through on goal. It was just an absolute. I, I I've been for one other game before, but the atmosphere was just really, really special. It was a celebration of the man. It was a celebration of everything that he's done for the club and the city over the last 8, 9 years. So yeah, absolute one of not just the talking moment of the week or that particular week, but definitely one of the talking moments of the entire season of any of my times watching football. Just an incredible experience to be a part of, and yeah, just I'm really glad that I could be there on that day, and a really emotional day. There was like the last 15 minutes of the game where everybody just stood up, and while they were singing the song all through I think the last 10 minutes, they just stood up, and then the entire ground was standing for the last 10 minutes, and the volume just went up. It became hard to like really hang on to your emotions at that point of time, and then later on when they had the speeches as well, was a tough one. But yeah, great day, amazing day, I'll never forget it. And Jurgen Klopp was given a really, really fond farewell at Anfield. So yeah, glad I could be a part of that.
Sounds absolutely amazing, and I think you did post some pictures and videos on the Talkie Taka handle as well. RK, what's it been for you? I see you're still dressed in the fine red of United.
Yeah, it's been a busy, after season for United with, busy, more for fans than for the club, I suppose. I don't know what the club was doing, having a review for 2.5 weeks, but the good part about it is it's finally closed. Eh, like whether the decision is correct or not, we'll get to know in a few months' time, but it's at least good that they were able to close it at least in 2.5 weeks or in 2 weeks, communicate it to Ten Hag that he's going to continue for the time being. So that's kind of my talking moment of the week. Obviously, the season ended on a very big high. It's still, very refreshing to think back on that particular day after a very, very hard season. And the big part of it is being able to finish in Europe and all the, like sustainability rules, how it helps us in terms of that. And also, obviously, it can't be too bad that Chelsea got pushed into the Conference League as well. So a lot of positives from the final day. But yeah, it's good that the coaching future is sorted out and we can now focus on the summer. Don't know how much budget we exactly have and how much we'll be able to generate through sales, but it's a good start to the summer, at least that the decision got closed.
Yeah, it was either going to be Newcastle playing in the Conference League or Chelsea getting a chance to become the first club to have won all the UEFA titles. So let's see what happens if we end up playing in it, because I think we still do have this UEFA PSR thing, which might mean that we get an year's ban, which is probably better to take in the Conference League as compared to the Europa, but we'll see. Ashwin, what's your talkie point?
Yeah, speaking about UEFA competition, so I had the privilege of attending both the Europa League final, which was in Dublin, which is where I live, and surprise result there with Atalanta winning, and then also probably a bucket list thing, watching the Champions League final, that too at Wembley. I was really hopeful of a Dortmund win uh, as a neutral, uh, or maybe not a neutral, but that of course didn't happen. Yeah, the Madrid machine, I mean, keeps on, rolling. I think they should just rename the Champions League to like Madrid CF competition or something. But yeah, for me, it was just an amazing moment to watch the Champions League final, to hear the Dortmund fans sing, to hear the Real Madrid fans sing. The game wasn't half as bad. We weren't expecting Dortmund to play so strongly, especially in the first half. And then Madrid did what they did best. Yeah, I would have loved it if Dortmund won, but it's fine. It's one thing crossed off the list. Watching the Champions League final, and hopefully next year when they have the new edition of the Champions League, they reset all the records, so everyone starts at zero, and Madrid don't have that 15 number next to them. But yeah, Hala Madrid it is for now.
Yeah, I don't think any records are being reset, considering they weren't reset in 92 or 93 or whenever the Champions League was rebranded. I don't think anything else is happening. For me, the talking point was there's not much to talk about on the pitch. Off the pitch, Chelsea continue to be the best soap opera there is in football. Watch was removed or mutually left by mutual consent or whatever you call a breakup these days. And in his place there was talk of Roberto De Zerbi, who by the way has still not gone anywhere with all these clubs announcing who they're hiring. De Zerbi's unemployed right now. Then there was Kieran McKenna suddenly being touted as this young coach who's going to get the job. Then you started hearing something about Enzo Maresca, who, okay, he is the champion of the championship with Leicester, but uh, yeah, suddenly out of the blue, Enzo Maresca becomes the Chelsea coach, and the post that announces his arrival has his playing career and his managerial career. Managerial career is, yeah, he managed 10 games for Parma and 20-30 games for Leicester City. That's his managerial thing, and his playing career is some 80 games for this club and 140 games for this club. I don't even remember the clubs. It's extremely underwhelming. I had heard, I mean, listening to the Straight Out of Cobham podcast, I'd heard quite a lot about, okay, Poch might actually just leave. And if you remember, we had tried to decode his press conferences as to what he's even trying to say, where it seemed like he wanted to go or he didn't want to go. It was extremely unclear, and eventually he did leave. But yeah, interesting to see how this pans out and what the Chelsea hierarchy wants to make out of this move. But yeah, extremely confusing times for a Chelsea fan. And as a Chelsea, if a Chelsea fan is saying that these are extremely confusing times, they're definitely very confusing times, considering our history.
I think Swag, for in order to get a managerial job, you need to have three traits. One is Pep Guardiola should have endorsed you at some point, or you should have been compared to Pep Guardiola. The
Hmm.
second thing is you need to be bald. And the third thing is you need to be a yes man, and that's what Chelsea need right now. And I think
9
he
minutes,
fits in all
22
three
seconds for
criteria,
Ashwin to
and maybe
mention the
that's why they
baldness.
drink when he says bald. But yeah, I mean, like it is weird. It's not just Chelsea, right? Company at Bayern Munich is also something that you know is very surprising. So
Yeah,
yeah, maybe that's what it is.
And
yeah.
you know
And
the name who was front of all the publicity and all the links at the start of the summer, Ruben Amorim. I think nothing happened about him.
oh, yeah, 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 him
So,
too.
so that was also a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
I
very
think I think
quickly.
when we started hearing his name linked with West Ham, I think that's when I started to have serious doubts about his involvement in any of these top clubs conversations. Obviously, it was very well written about, and Liverpool were also heavily linked with him. But while those articles were being written, apparently our technical, our sporting director was in Holland or Netherlands and talking to Arne Slot at the time. And then we suddenly heard a West Ham rumor. And yeah, so that's when I thought that, okay, there's something strange about this guy if he's being linked to West Ham after all the rumors that we've been reading. Yeah, Maresca was a crazy one, but nothing for me, nothing comes close to as crazy as Bayern Munich, Ken Vincent company. I have absolutely no idea what is the process they go through. I mean, we all know it was a train wreck. They tried to get Tuchel to stay back at the end of it. I think if I'm not wrong, did they end up agreeing that he would stay, and then finally, oh no, that was Barcelona and Xavi. Okay, so it's a contest. It's a real contest between Bayern and Barcelona as to who were the bigger shit show this summer. But yeah, company, I just have no. It's just, I think this is like a vibes signing. It's like Pep Guardiola may have said, "Hey, he was a good player for me. Why don't you sign this guy?" And yeah, nothing says let's go to the biggest club in the world after getting Burnley relegated. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, really couldn't understand that how someone can get rewarded for, basically relegating a club. Made no attempt to adjust his tactics to, that level of team. And uh, there are two strands of thought, like, like for example, Deepak on the group was talking about how it's so difficult for these kind of managers to handle teams like Burnley. But having said that, like, company, what has he done to earn that job? Nothing at all. And the other thing I can't understand about it is why is it so tough for Bayern to convince people, to come over? It's completely unheard of. Rangnick, I mean, he's not a very, like, what do you say, like, coveted person or, name on the list, but even he turned them down. Nagelsmann turns them down, and the list keeps going on. So completely confused about what Bayern are up to, what their future is. I mean, why are people so scared about Bayern suddenly? Swag, I think you're talking of, that they wanted to give only an interim contract, but that didn't turn out to be the case. They gave company a 3-year contract or something like that, I suppose. So even that wasn't the reason for people turning down, such a big club. And Chelsea, to be honest, I'm not able to understand their strategy either. You know, like, they just signed Poch an year back. They should have had a honest conversation about how the next 3-4 years or next 2-3 years are going to look like, I suppose. And you don't suddenly change that in 1 year, right? So either Poch has done something, to change color, or it's the, hierarchy. And looking at the hierarchy of the owners, what they have done since they came in, it's definitely clear to see that something in, ownership is so muddled and so confused. And whatever they are thinking of, whether they want to get a systems guy, a guy who is happy to be part of a setup, why would they end up with Enzo Maresca of all people? I think, that also beats me. It looks like another short term, punt risk from Chelsea again.
The
Yeah, I
Chelsea is
think
basically work experience for all managers. So CV जब भरना होता है, then everyone just writes also manage Chelsea if you can't fill the page.
uh, I mean, it's not going to last very long for a lot of managers. For I don't think they'll qualify enough to write that on their resume also. But just coming to the point, RK, you were making, I think one thing that we all have to acknowledge, and it's been brutally clear this season, is that there's nobody in the market. Every single, I think this has been, I don't know if you guys agree, but for me this has been the most amount of high profile jobs available at the same time at any point of time in my time watching football. We're talking about Barcelona, we're talking about Bayern Munich, we're talking about Liverpool, Chelsea, potentially Manchester United. We're talking about pretty much like the elite clubs that we've all grown up listening to, watching. I'm sure I'm missing a few Italian clubs here and there. Dortmund, Nuri Sahin. So I think every single top club in every single league has been undergoing some churn from a manager point of view, and there's just no candidates. I think what we've seen at the end of this season is that I think Pep is now the last dying embers of the previous generation of elite managers that exist. I think the football has moved on from the likes of Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho, so they are no longer in these discussions. I feel that Thomas Tuchel is slowly going down that route as well. I think it's very telling that Manchester United had serious conversations with somebody like Tuchel, but ended up keeping or staying with Ten Hag. I think that tells a story on its own as well. That maybe 2 years ago this would not have been a conversation. 2.5 week review, you said. I think it would have been a 2.5 minute, 2.5 day discussion if Thomas Tuchel 2 years ago or 3 years ago was available and Ten Hag had the season that he had. So I think it's a very telling situation that football has changed and moved in the right in a different direction. The other really interesting part, and this is specifically from a Liverpool context, is every single person who was linked was a risk, was a gamble. Xabi Alonso was the only guy that I would have wanted more than the others because of the Liverpool connection, but he also remains a gamble. Every single person was a gamble of the names that were there in the market. But the really interesting thing is that the difference, I guess, between 12 months ago when Ten Hag was signed by United is Liverpool got their global sporting director in place, their technical director in place, and their sporting director in place for Liverpool, and only then had the conversations with their coach and hired this guy as a head coach. Now that's a very very telling thing. It's well documented that Klopp and Edwards definitely had issues when it comes to signings, when it comes to who has the final call in terms of extending contracts of players who are above 30. Gini Wijnaldum, James Milner, Henderson, all of these were conflicts that they had. Edwards left, Edwards' replacement left within a year. Then a Klopp buddy was signed as a temporary interim work from home sporting director. So we all know that that was a problem. And then the replacement, when Klopp says he's leaving, suddenly the old gang is back. And now the replacement to Klopp is signed as a head coach and very, very specifically mentioned as a head coach. In fact, Klopp in his final day, final comments was said that the new manager, and then corrected himself and said, "I'm sorry, the new head coach." So it's very clearly a deliberate decision, and I think he's going to be told that, hey, you please take care of what's on the pitch. We'll take care of whatever the profile of player that fits your style of play, and we'll keep signing. Obviously, they'll consult him, but I don't think it's part of his job description. And it's very similar to how Arteta started at Arsenal. He was signed as a head coach. He worked very closely with Edu over the first couple of years and then got promoted once they saw a path going in the right direction. So maybe that's the new trend. I think managers will have, with no major name in the market, I think managers will have to prove their value and then maybe get promoted into a situation where they can take calls. I think United might look back and say that, hey, if I could redo things, it would have been something like that, where maybe Ten Hag was not given the freedom to go and sign players or the personnel and also the people from, say, the Dutch league, that, or maybe they would have gone ahead and done it anyway, but I'm sure they would have wanted the structure in place, would have challenged something like that happening. So I think a lot of clubs now, and I'm sure Chelsea will be the same. I think a lot of clubs will go down this direction going forward.
Yeah, so Radha, you were talking of how it would have been a 2.5 minute decision 2-3 years back, but given all the circumstances, I'm quite happy at the end of it that they kind of stuck with Ten Hag, because a part of me always you should think that the problems which are at Man United are not going to solve by removing the manager, because we have done it now. It would have been the fifth time probably that we are firing a manager, and of all the managers, I think I've told you also separately when he was appointed as well. This is the first time I think we got the appointment right in terms of doing the due diligence, like what we were looking for in a coach, what he was bringing to the table, his past record, how his career was kind of approaching a peak rather than on the way down, right? So I think this is the first time, as opposed to Van Gaal, Mourinho, Moyes. I think the appointments we got all of them wrong. Ole definitely got it wrong, right? But the first time we got it right. So one good season and one bad season for me wasn't, and the bad season is something which keeps repeating at United, whoever comes in, right? And it's not like anyone can just come in and solve it. I'm not even sure if, a Klopp or a Pep comes in and, in the second season, they also don't have that dip. Yes, we observed a lot of coaching issues. We know, I'm not going to go through that. So all those, massive coaching flaws, but it's so much about the environment at United that I wanted Ten Hag to be given that chance. And especially when, as you are saying, the lack of alternatives, I definitely didn't want Tuchel or someone to come in who have the problems of their own, who can't work with the ownership, who can't, not great at developing youth players, which is what is something which is coming through at United. So it was a big worry for me. So that way, I'm happy that Ten Hag gets one more season. Hopefully, get something this summer in terms of squad building, which helps him, and also with the technical director and stuff in place. Hopefully, they're able to sort out something in terms of the tactics, or lay down something like a marker, something like a foundation based on which we are more compact and more stable next season. Let's hope for that at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that point about having one good season where we weren't expected to land a trophy and a top four finish, plus having a good run in the Europa League as well, and getting the best out of, you know, players like Marcus Rashford and like Bruno and like the other Casemiro, for example. Like those are all the things that worked in his favor, right? So there was the general euphoria as we entered the second season. I remember our first podcast of this particular season, and we are all in really good spirits. We thought that signings were also not half as bad. Obviously, the season did not go as per plan, so it definitely warranted a review. I think Ineos did the right thing about taking their time. There's something about Ineos that I read recently, and it's got to do with all the sporting teams that they own, right? So even with British Cycling or their the sailing team, they tend to take a long time to review how the season has gone in, and then they pull the gun or like make the decision. In this particular case, I think the stuff that got out about Ineos talking to like managers from other clubs, I think the timing couldn't have been worse because it was in the week that we had the FA Cup final. I don't know if that kind of spurred the team on as well to play for Ten Hag, because the one thing that we do see time and again, which we didn't probably see with other managers, is that some of the players or the majority of the players want to play for Ten Hag. Right? With Jose Mourinho, the last 3 to 4 months, you could see that the players did not want to play for him. With Ten Hag, I see the likes of Menu, Garnacho, Hoyland, Onana, of course, all of his signings. Like you could see that they really want to play for them, and that was evidenced in the FA Cup final. That was evidenced in the Liverpool game. Some games, where they were required to win and they did win, you could see that. And of course, Ineos took note of that. That coupled with the fact that some of the so-called elite managers were not available, and the fact that Ineos would have had to spend a lot of money trying to do this reset again. I think that's what worked in Ten Hag's favor. Now with Wilcox in, with Barada in, Ashworth probably coming in over the next 2-3 months, he would have a structure. And if he fails with that structure behind him, that's when I feel they will pull the trigger.
Okay. And talking about the rest of the Premier League, of course, City already won it again, as I mentioned. Is there any hope while Guardiola is still there, or should we just not bother next season turning up and just let it be a procession? Just focus on our own teams rather than this
There's
so-called race.
there's no hope, man. There's no hope. There's no hope. The only. I mean, let's say Arsenal get a world class number 9, and then we're talking about Arsenal probably improving again. The difficult thing now for Arsenal is that just somehow in the second season that we went for it, we managed to get over the line and win the league. Now it's been 2 seasons where Arsenal have actually. So you can always forgive the first one. The second one then starts now. I would assume, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I've not played at elite level or anything of that sort, but I would assume it starts weighing on your mind, right? If you go twice consecutively to the very end with a team that is so clearly, it's like against Real Madrid. If you keep going to the final of the Champions League against Real Madrid and you lose to them multiple times, you start to believe that okay, it's impossible to win. So that's the danger now for Arsenal, but they are the only team in with a hope. Obviously, Chelsea is nowhere near that discussion. Liverpool with a new manager and God knows how that's going to pan out is not going to be in the discussion for winning the league, at least in this season. So it's only Arsenal. Manchester United again is not ready for that the Premier League push. So yeah, if it's a two-horse race when we're starting off, the only thing anybody can hope for is that hey, Pep loses some energy, announces his retirement, and things people start thinking about hey, let me take care of myself and let me worry about what I'm doing for myself. That's the only hope. But knowing what a professional and a genius manager he is, also I'm sure he won't let that happen. Honestly, they were at 85%. I would say this season they still got the job done. I think they were. This is the most vulnerable Man City team that I've seen in the Pep years. Every match that they played, it felt like the opposition could really get at them and score against them. And despite that, they won the league against probably the best Arsenal team that we've seen in the last 10-15 years. Yeah, it's looking extremely bleak. I think everybody should just take some realistic goals of progression for their own team, focus on that, and then be happy if they achieve that and be sad if they don't, and forget about Man City.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
I
my
think it's
view, I completely agree that there's going to be only one major team who's really going to challenge City next season, because Liverpool, with the kind of squad that they have, should be there if Klopp had continued, but we don't know how that's going to shape up. It's possible that Slot is able to raise a title challenge, especially with how healthy his squad is and they add a few players. But new manager, you can't even comment on that till you see them in action. Coming to Arteta, I think one thing that Arsenal need to do, whatever happens in the next couple of years, is just tie him down, keep him there, because one thing is for sure, he's definitely going to be healthy for them in terms of the future. If he doesn't get successful against Pep, it's still going to be very good for Arsenal. He still has all the tools, the personality to be able to build a dynasty at Arsenal. So they need to keep him. They need to give him confidence. Fans shouldn't be jumping on him. I know all the AFTV people can, as Ashwin likes to say, they can turn on him if they give another season like the last couple of months, but they need to keep faith in him, because I think him and we were talking of how the older generation is now slowly maybe coming to its end. We don't know what Klopp's next plans are. I don't think he's retired as such, but but when you talk of the next generation, it's basically Arteta and Alonso who seem to be at the forefront of it. Maybe Nagelsmann has a lot of time to come back into that conversation as well. So definitely going into the next generation, Arteta is going to be one of the elite managers. What they need to do is, and I was talking about this to Arun, and we were talking of Havertz as an example. So for me, Havertz ended up being a highly successful signing, and but it was there was a big element of serendipity in that, right? Because he was signed as a central midfielder and to solve a problem in midfield, but he ended up solving a problem for them as a false nine. And in the time that it took them to adjust from that, what they initially wanted him to do, to what he ended up doing for them, I think they lost a few points in that phase, especially in December when like they were not playing great. So I think what they need to focus on this season is sign the right players. Don't try to pay, fit square pegs into round holes. Start on the right note, because there's no margin for error at all against City. So Arsenal have got to buy the right players. Like they only need a couple, but they need to buy the right players. They need to give Saka a rest. They need to give him a rotation. I think those are the two main signings for them. And then we might actually see Arsenal being able to push City, especially if City are less hungry than before.
Yeah, I think in terms of that signings point, right, RK, they've always obviously been linked to Benjamin Sesko and like some of the other more forward players that they really need. But I think with the Euros this season, it's going to be really difficult, and plus the PSR coming into play as well. I know Arsenal are relatively healthy compared to the likes of United and like some of the other teams, but still the players that they are linked to would cost big bucks, and that is going to be really difficult. I would have said that Arsenal would give City a run for their money because Pep would lose all his motivation with Klopp going off. But this guy is a machine, right? And there are rumors building up that this might actually be Pep's last season. And if that is the case, the guy is fucking going for a quadruple. Like he's not going to stop. Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, it just seems to be one more boring season where City just
But
end up winning.
I mean, just talking of, you were mentioning about the last season and stuff. City was so desperate, in their attempt to get the whole investigation off track. It looked really, creepy in how scared they seem to be. Is that going to? I mean, none of us expect anything to happen there, but why are City so desperate about that?
I mean, that's how they want to do it, right? Like they have the money to do it, and even the 115 charges that were levied against them, they've got some really good lawyers to delay that decision as much as they possibly can. It's so funny that the likes of Everton and Nottingham Forest, who have had lesser offenses levied against them, have got points deducted, whereas a team which has had 115 charges against them has got nada, right? So that just goes to show like how they are using their money in ways unimaginable. But yeah, I mean, like we can't control that. I would love for City to lose all their titles and be relegated, and like all the clubs deciding that they don't play Premier League anymore. As far as we know, at this point, that's not going to happen. The City machine is going to run strong. A few things that might turn things in Arsenal's favor, right? And we have spoken about this last year as well. There's a good possibility that Bernardo Silva will leave. There's a good possibility that De Bruyne might leave or may not be starting as many games. But they've already identified their replacement. They have Foden already. They're talking about Paqueta. I heard is one of the signings that they're linked to as well. So yeah, I mean, we can all obviously dream, and we'll see how it goes next season. But yeah, we know that Arsenal are going to be their only challengers.
Yeah, so Paqueta, I think, is dead in the water, considering. I mean, it's looking really serious against him right now. He might be banned from playing football for a really long time with all the betting allegations and potential spot. It's pretty much spot fixing. If you just describe it in any other way, like any other way, it's proper spot fixing, like we saw Mohammad Amir and Mohammad Asif do for Pakistan all those years ago. Yeah, I think it's looking hard for him to get out of that, but he would have really, really completed that team. I was saying it last season as well when they signed Mateus Nunes, and although I expected Mateus Nunes to be better than he was, Paqueta would really complete that Man City team. I'm just keeping the 115 charges aside because that's bullshit. Nothing's ever going to happen out of that. But on the pitch, they have no equal. And it's going to continue this season as well. I think Arsenal can give them a push. Let's see if they have the motivation levels. But I completely agree with RK. I think Arsenal are well set to be the dominant team once Pep leaves. So the moment Pep decides that this is done and he's left, I think Arsenal are going to be hard for anybody else to keep up with. I think the others like say Maresca and Arne Slot, they need to figure their shit out over the next couple of years so that they can start putting some challenge up to Arsenal when that period comes. Ten Hag, all of these guys. But yeah, Arteta is the most stable team in the league after Man City is Arsenal right now, and they're going to be in a great position once Pep leaves. So yeah, all bright future for them. I don't think any other club is anywhere close to that at this moment of time.
Very optimistic of you to say that Maresca needs to figure his shit out in 2 years, considering that's not likely to be his tenure. But
At whichever club he's at, maybe he's at Spurs in a few years. You never know.
yeah, and so talking of legacy and things like this, Real with their Champions League winning prospects, and now they've even added Kylian Mbappe to that list. Is there any end in sight to them not winning the Champions League while looking
It's
like shit in the first half of the season?
So I've been following this team for pretty much the entire time that I've been watching football, and this has been the most Galacticos assembly that I've ever seen. Like, it's not Galacticos because they are not the biggest players and the biggest positions in the biggest clubs in the world, but these are potentially the best players in for the
Smart
next
signing.
10 years. They're going to be the
It's smart
best
signing.
players in the world for the next 10 years. We're talking about Vinicius Junior is already people are talking about as I think Jude Bellingham for me is the best player in the world right now. Kylian Mbappe, well, how do I say Jude Bellingham is the best player in the world when Kylian Mbappe exists? So, and then okay, that's the one Galactico signing, Kylian Mbappe. But if you look at the rest of the team, it's incredibly well built, and their midfield just makes anybody's mouth water. It's like, and they've reached a situation where they have pretty much the best player in every position without actually going out and signing the best player of that position every season. So amazing. Florentino Perez, I always used to have a lot of disrespect for him because of the way he chose to do things and just go sign Ronaldo, Kaká, go sign Zidane, Figo, like anybody with money can do that, blah, blah, blah. But this has been like a proper, like under the radar. They've created by far the best team, best squad in the world. And they have like one of the most legendary managers, again, a ticking time bomb. So they're going to have to make a decision as to who comes next as well. But maybe by that time, Xabi Alonso is ready to move on. So you never know. But yeah, incredible team. I just like I was very, very like not very optimistic about anybody challenging Man City. I really don't see how anybody's going to challenge Real Madrid either.
Yeah, and I think the point that you made about them having signed some of the best players of the next 5 to 7 years, right? It has happened for a reason. Real Madrid are the most desirable club in the world. They're like the Ferrari of football. So the likes of Mbappe, the likes of Bellingham, like all these players, Arda Güler, like these players really want to join Madrid because of the success that they have had over the past many years. Everyone grew up watching a Cristiano Ronaldo or Zinedine Zidane. This particular crop of players that we are seeing, they have their idols who played for this club. I think there's somewhere in there, a lot of these signings or players wanted to join Madrid as opposed to, Real Madrid paying big bucks, because Mbappe, they got him for free ultimately. Kamavinga, even United went for him and he was like, fuck you, I'm going to Madrid. Chouamani the same. Like, people really want to join Madrid. So that's why they have been able to assemble this squad. And Perez that way has done an incredible job of just identifying the players that he wants. And he just
No, but
gets them.
there's never been a point of time, like in the last 30 years or 20 years or however long we've been watching football, there has never been a point of time where that has not been true. Real Madrid has always been the destination for pretty much, barring people from England, pretty much everywhere else in the world. Every single player has always had the dream of going to Real. For some time, in that brief period of time, there was a Barcelona
Barcelona,
obsession
yeah,
as well,
exactly.
but it was a very short period of time. Real always existed and it never went away. It's just that they made some really bad decisions at times. And just look at what's happening at Barcelona. Tons of people want to join Barcelona even now. They're just making really bad decisions of who those players who come in should be. And these guys are doing it totally differently. The story, for example, of how they signed Rodrigo, who's one of the best players in the team right now, but he was an absolute nobody when they signed him. Endrick is another one, right? Like,
Hendrik, yeah.
people are criticizing that move.
Even
We'll see,
Vinicius.
maybe, yeah, Vinicius, Endrick
Yeah.
might end up becoming a real world beater, and these are not Zinedine Zidane's, they're not Ronaldo's. So while, yes, if they wanted, they could have gone and got, let's say, Kevin De Bruyne, but it's just the wrong move to make at this point of time for any club, right? But then earlier Real Madrid, the Real Madrid of the 2010s, would have gone and done just that. This is a very different Real Madrid. They're doing the smart thing. They obviously have the allure that you're talking about. They have all the money in the world. It's going to be really hard to stop them if there's somebody competent making decisions as well.
Yeah, the only thing that could happen is probably potentially Perez leaving or like resigning or something, but I don't think this guy is going to stop as well. But yeah, again, to your original question, Swagat, about them winning the Champions League, right? I would love to call it luck, but it is definitely not luck, right? Because they have been winning these titles again and again and again and again. Carlo Ancelotti, is this his fifth or his sixth Champions League? So they've got a manager who has done it not just with Real Madrid but with other clubs also. I think the City game is the one that you felt that they would be out, but aside from that particular game, there was never a moment you thought that okay, Madrid are going to go out and there's going to be another team who is going to win the Champions League. I was there at the game, and the first 45 minutes, Adeyemi had some three shots. He hit the post, and then in the 70th minute, Real Madrid decided to turn up. And it was that classic Marco Reus moment where, he gets substituted in, Cruz gets a corner, gets an assist, 2 minutes later, and Carvajal score. Like, I wasn't expecting Madrid to score at that point in time, especially seeing how Dortmund had played in that entire game. But they just have this habit of doing it. They did it against City, they did it against Bayern Munich, they had to do it against Leipzig as well. Let's not forget that. So they just know the winning formula, man. Like, and I think it doesn't matter if the competition format is changing next year. I still feel they're, going to reach the final stages or win the new Champions League.
I think it just creates a huge amount of self confidence. I think a lot of this is all mentality where, uh, like Madrid have never been a systems team for the last 10 years and they have won so many Champions League. So it's not about Madrid being the best team in any of those Champions League for that matter, right? It's all about having really clutch players who turn up when it really needs, when they like need to turn up. Otherwise, they are just happy to take blows, take punches. It's not obviously, it's not like Southgate. It's still very watchable and good to watch, but it's not like Madrid are dominating anyone. So I think they just know how to get things done, how to be clutch, how to be clinical. I think that's the primary definition of clutch. I think is to be clinical in football, especially. So, kind of they have mastered that, and then they are getting players who are going to continue being clinical, right? Mbappe is always going to be a clinical player. Vinicius, Bellingham, these are all, and the only thing that I can hope for is, with all these now these young players becoming superstars, there starts to be some real ego, especially when Ancelotti goes, right? I think the next manager will struggle to handle some of these guys, especially Mbappe. I really hope Mbappe kind of creates a problem for Madrid, because that's the only way they're not going to be the most successful team. Because Mbappe doesn't track back, he doesn't defend, so it's going to be a tactical problem for them to solve. And the other problem is he likes to be the playmaker. He likes to drop deep. So how is that going to work with people like Bellingham and Vinicius? Bellingham, it's a good thing that he's not going to play false nine or number nine next season. He's going to play deeper in his actual role. So it's a good thing. But again, how do these guys gel with each other? I can see a few egos already rising in that team, and with Mbappe coming in, there might be some of that PSG culture which starts, creeping into this team. So that's the, I think, only, I think,
Hope,
silver lining
yes,
for other
that's the right
fans.
word. That's the right word. Okay, hope. That's the only hope.
All right. Before we do a quick recap of the season, Ashwin, do you want to do the honors by telling us who won in the FPL league and who didn't?
Yeah. So I think the last week was a pretty interesting one because we had Connor Dean leading up till week N -1, and then eventually Prashant Balachandra got 87 points and he won the league by just 2 points. As far as your Talkie Taka hosts and speakers are concerned, there's just one person in the top 10. I think rather decided to retire mid-season, so he ended up finishing. Let me scroll. I'm still scrolling. He ended up finishing 13th, and then Swag finished 11th, and I was not in the top three. I was fourth, which is respectable, I would say. But yeah, congratulations, Prashant, and yeah, let's try to continue the FPL tradition, and next year maybe we'll have even more players.
And let's not forget mentioning the draft Premier League, which yours truly won on an exciting last day, where Pratik and me were equal on points and going head to head on the last day of the season, and he ended up subbing a guy who scored some 11 points and ended up losing that game week. So
Diogo
yeah,
Dallo, I think.
yeah, Diogo Dallo. So I'll take that draft. I think 2 years in a row now. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I think Radha decided to quit FPL the day he triple captained Haaland, who was taken off after playing one
Yeah,
minute or
fuck
something like that.
that, man. 45 minutes. I
It's
got
like
3 points. I got 3 points for my triple captain.
it's like Jose Mourinho when he decided to throw the league away to win the Europa League with Man United. That's what Radha did.
Yeah. All right, let's do a recap of the season. So let's start with match of the season. And I'm going to go first because I haven't had much chance to talk about Chelsea this season. you I mean, it's going to be Chelsea 4, Manchester United 3 until 90 plus 99th minute or something. It was 3-2 Manchester United. It was seemingly the points were headed towards Old Trafford. Big Sir Jim Ratcliffe seemed pretty happy, and then all of a sudden, Cole Palmer struck twice in 2 minutes. I mean, pretty much straight away from kickoff, we ended up going up and attacking and scoring from the corner. So yeah, that was a crazy game. So we took the lead, then United came back. United equalized from 2-0 down to 2-2, then took the lead, obviously 3-2, then 100th minute and 101st minute. I think that's the latest winner scored in the Premier League for a long time, if not ever. But yeah, that's my match of the season. Ashwin, what's yours?
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna go with the same scoreline. Sorry, I was just still thinking about that game because at that point, the storyline was about Poch getting the sack until 3-2, and then it changed like that. But yeah, classic United. So for me, I could have gone for many, but I would go for the Wolves win, so the 4-3, and especially it was a similar performance to how you mentioned about the Chelsea Man United game, and of course Kobe Mainu scoring that goal in the end as well, and nutmeg, and then that finish. I think that was the one moment from that particular game that I really enjoyed. That's the game I'm going to go for.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have picked United 4-3 as our favorite game. So it's very clear for our viewers who haven't followed United how the season has gone for us. Even mine, like the pick is going to be a 4-3. It's the Old Trafford 4-3 FA Cup quarterfinal. That's definitely my favorite moment of the season, including the final, especially because we watched it, at a pub. It is a public viewing. Lots of, very good atmosphere, and it's going to be something that all my friends are going to rib me about because I ended up going and hugging a random guy. So but yeah, given another chance, yeah, some kind of bromance wouldn't go amiss, I guess. So great game, especially the final moment of the game with Garnacho and Diallo countering. It's going to stay in memory for a long time.
That guy gave him the shirt which he's wearing right now.
Mine was actually the one that I was thinking about for a really long time was the Liverpool 4-3 against Fulham, and that would have been pretty poetic if all of us had picked 4-3s, because that Fulham game it had some of the greatest goals of the season. All the goals that we scored were incredible, and then Trent Alexander-Arnold with the captain's armband, scoring a late 90 plus minute winner at the Cop end just was a great symbol of our season where we were not a very good team for a long time, but had some incredible mentality and incredible ability to get out of jail all through. But I'm going all the way back to one of the first few instances where we saw that mentality come out this season. That's Liverpool versus Newcastle. We had a red card early on, one of those really shady early calls that we got, and we were down a man, down a goal, and we were pretty much getting thumped by Newcastle left, right, and center, only for Darwin Nunes to come on and score of two chances, pretty much the 2 out of 3 chances that we had in the entire game, perhaps, and incredible result, and really gave us that feeling in the beginning of the season that hey, so many things are going against us, but there's a real mentality being built, even though the team is new. So yeah, I think that started it, and we saw so many instances. I think this is the most late winners, late goals that we've scored in pretty much any season under Klopp, and probably any season that I've watched in my time supporting Liverpool. So some amazing results, even though the performances of this season have not been that great. So yeah, Liverpool versus Newcastle 2-1, very very challenging game away from home. Coming up with the goods late, definitely my game of the season.
Okay. For player of the season, my pick is Cole Palmer, more so considering the fact that the level of the team that he was playing in wasn't that high, and he basically carried us to a European finish while it seemed unlikely even till like 6 games to go or something like that. And Phil Foden and Ollie Watkins, notable mentions as well.
Yeah, so I'll go with Foden as well and Cole Palmer. I think you mentioned the reasons, so don't need to go again into this. But from the Euro leagues, I would say Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen and Bellingham, obviously, for Real Madrid, and Vinicius, who is my Ballon d'Or candidate. I'll go with those.
Yeah, I think in addition to the above names, lots of I think commonalities, but I think William Saliba is one of the player of the season for me. Obviously Foden and Bellingham, but William Saliba, centre backs don't usually enter this conversation, but he's I think he's the next iteration of Van Dijk, the best defender in the league or the best defender even in the world, so to say. There were rumors that Deschamps is not going to pick him, which would have really riled me up because Deschamps is again a person who tries to stick with the old guard, but good to see that he's starting for France tonight as well. So yeah, Saliba definitely one of the players of the season for me.
Yeah, I think I had Foden and Palmer written down as well, but I'm not going to go with them because everybody's already talked about them. I'll go with Watkins. I think it was a high pressure season for Ollie Watkins, and the fact that they've actually delivered a top 4 finish and are going to be playing in the Champions League is some incredible achievement for that club. And they kind of just rode on his shoulders for a large part of it as well. 19 goals, 13 assists, all round performance of a season from Watkins. A few other shout outs. I thought this was a real coming of age, and he's not young anymore, but a real coming of age season for Dom Solanke. I always thought he was a promising guy, maybe not going to be delivering at the highest level, but a real high level performance, Premier League performance from him this time as well. And I'm really excited by those young wingers at Crystal Palace. I think Olise and Eze, again, there used to be guys who just, okay, nice to watch. They're probably not going to do much. I think both of them had moments of the season where they showed that they could be among the best wingers in this league. Eze, not just an attacking winger of sorts, but even a playmaker. So, yeah, very excited by those guys, but Watkins has my vote as the player of the season.
Okay. For manager of the season, if I were to ask you your pick, like throughout the season, I kept saying that I was pretty impressed by the job that Rob Edwards was doing at Luton, considering the resources. And if he had managed to keep them up, he would have definitely been my manager of the season pick. But I'd probably go with Androni Iraola for Bournemouth, who again, I mean, they didn't spend shitloads of money, but whatever they did, he used effectively. Kudos to their board as well for sticking with him, because I think the first 8 games or 9 games they had 1 point or 2 points, and they stuck with him, and he took them up pretty well. They ended up something like ninth or 10th or something like that, and which is pretty good going for a team which plays at a ground which is 15 or 18,000 capacity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I actually totally missed those names, but I would probably take the non-Premier League route, and I'll go with Xabi Alonso. Like he could have won the treble, almost won the treble, won the double against in the Bundesliga, which is absolutely a phenomenal achievement, unbeaten as well. So I have to hand it over to him, and I think closely followed by Carlo Ancelotti, won the league, won the Champions League. Enough said.
Yeah, same as Ashwin.
Yeah, I think you can't go without talking about for this evening and every evening. I think there's one man that needs to be talked about. Aston Villa, just an incredible performance. I don't think any of us saw it coming. In the beginning of the season, we kept talking about how Spurs could be up there, and we kept thinking that Villa will fall off and Spurs will. And to be fair, they were also handed a lot of help by Spurs because they kind of dropped off a cliff. But no doubt about it, they have to. Emery has to be given credit for that season. Just a few honorable shout outs. I think you can't underestimate the scale of job that Sean Dyche has done at Everton as well. If you talk about all the problems that they have had this season in terms of getting points docked off and still comfortably staying up. In fact, if you take some of those point deductions away, they'll be pushing mid-table, pushing first half finishes as well. But one guy who just like made me scratch my head and figure out where the hell has this come from was Oliver Glasner. Crystal Palace were just incredible at the end of that season. I don't know where this guy came from, but he delivered proper elite level results. I think in the last 10 games of the season, he was in the top 4 in the form table. So that's incredible for anybody at Crystal Palace to be churning out those kinds of numbers. And suddenly got linked with all the, I guess there are no managers in the world anymore, so he got linked with all the big jobs as well. But yeah, very, very short time for him spent there. But yeah, one to watch out for next season for sure.
Okay. For goal of the season, I could pick out one of the Palmer goals again, but I would like to say something other than Palmer when I do my season review. So I'll go with Caicedo on the final day when Chelsea were pretty chilled out. Okay, we'll either finish in the Europa League or the Conference League. So, and he went for broke from the midline, and he actually scored. So I'll go for that.
Man, Garnacho, like that is one of the best goals that I've ever seen. Like it beats the Rooney goal, it beats the Cristiano Ronaldo goal in the Champions League. It was just phenomenal. I think he does need to work on his celebration a bit. He's copying Ronaldo a bit too much, but wow, what a goal! Brilliant.
Yeah, same for me. Incredible character, the guys. Like the only thing, you know, like from my side for Garnacho is just stop doing that every now and then. Like you're never going to recreate that goal again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't feel. I don't feel overhead kicks as much as a lot of other people. Like even the whole Rivaldo overhead kicks that used to be talked about so much. I never really felt that those were the best goals that were scored around the world. Of course, Ganacho, incredible goal, won the goal of the season award as well for the Premier League. I'll go with an Alexis McAllister one that from early on in the season against Fulham. I think that was very, very similar to. I think if you guys remember the Papi Cisse one from all those years ago, where he cuts across the ball from way on the left. I think Papi Cisse's one was still a better goal because it was way more towards the left corner flag and lot more angle and whip to it. But a very, very similar goal, a cutting volley which went from left to right in a beautiful swing. Yeah, so Alexis McAllister scored a couple of stunners this season, but that one is the one that I'll go for my goal of the season.
Okay. for signing of the season, and I promise this is the last time I mention Cole Palmer on this episode, but I mean, I have to give it to him, and particularly considering the price that he came for, it was 35 million. Yeah, it's like, what a Cole, man, what a Cole. So, I mean, and
Yeah,
RK, he's not Carlton Palmer.
yeah. Carlton Palmer is my player of the season, guys. So I'm doing a lot of plus ones on this particular panel, but yeah, you take the price, you take the output, and how young he is, how unexpected the output is, has to be the player of the season for me.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
me
I
it's
mean,
Bellingham. Talk about young. Talk about great season. I think he had one of the most incredible season. Although I could say Harry Kane as well, but he didn't win anything at the end of the day. But yeah, Bellingham did, and he's definitely mine. My player of the season. Oh, sorry, signing of the season.
yeah, I mean, I've tried to stick to the Premier League. So otherwise, yeah, Bellingham, Xabi Alonso, all easily should feature in my list as well. Bellingham for me is my to. You mentioned Vinicius is yours, but Bellingham is my pick for the Ballon d'Or next year. I think an incredible season for a while in the beginning of that season, he was really carrying Madrid. And if you guys remember, they were out of all their top players at that point of time. Like there was
Yeah.
pretty much every important player in that team was falling with some kind of injury, and he was carrying the club, scoring late winners, scored late goals as late as the last game of the season as well. So I mean, he kept it going all through the club, all through the. It's very very rare that somebody who comes with such huge expectations, huge fees, and actually raises your expectations even further in their first season. I'm dead excited to watch him in the Euros as well. Even
If
though last night was not a nice advertisement for the way that England are going to play, but I thought Bellingham was outstanding yet again. But my player of the season, again sticking to the Premier League, another guy who really shone for England last night was Declan Rice. I think he is one of those guys who you mentioned Saliba, incredible season. He's going to be the Van Dijk of the next 5 6 years probably. But for me, that transformational impact that Van Dijk and Alisson had for Liverpool, I feel like Declan Rice is having that for Arsenal. There's just a different aura in terms of, and just watching him last night for England, every single time that it looked like the opposition is going to be potentially moving into the front foot, he was always there just like 5 seconds before an action happened, ready to sweep up. And he comes up with some important goals as well. So I think proper leadership addition to that Arsenal squad. And I think one thing that you'll see with all these top teams is they have an abundance of leaders, and he's definitely adding to that at Arsenal. So yeah,
you know,
Rice for me.
yeah, just to add to Radha's point, if Bellingham ends up winning the Euros despite Southgate, just give him the Ballon d'Or.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, so three young Englishmen being the signing of the season. Interesting times indeed. On the other side, the flip side, the flop signing of the season, I'm going to go with Nkunku because of all the potential and all the hype. And okay, he didn't play much, but c'est la vie. So I have to go with what's happened. It could have been him or Lavia, considering the price tags and the minutes that we got from them. But Nkunku had a more significant role, was supposed to play a more significant role as the number 9, and that didn't happen. Thankfully, goals came from other places as well. But yeah, hopefully he does better next season.
Yeah, for me, can I go with Anthony 2 seasons in a row? No, but I think for me, it's going to be one of the United lads. Mason Mount for me was a signing that I personally did not understand at that point in time. I know there have been enough articles written about it. Eventually, he did not show what he is capable of doing, and the fact that it ended up saving Chelsea as well is like the final nail in the coffin. And yeah, for me, Mason Mount, closely followed by Amrabat, because he came in with such fanfare. He would solve our, defensive midfield issues, and he was absolutely terrible until maybe the last few games. But overall, a really, really bad season. So pick your battle between the two.
Yeah. For me, it's two players. Matthews Nunes, definitely the worst signing. He didn't have any injuries to talk about, at least not major ones. Still couldn't make any kind of impact. And also, Ansu Fati is, such a hyped player, came on loan to Brighton. Okay, I
Yeah.
suffered some injuries as usual, but nothing much from him as well. So those two are my worst signings of the season.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Fati
you
is an
guys are.
interesting one, actually. Fati is an interesting one because I remember 2 years back he was being compared to Vinicius, and now he's like nowhere to be seen. So yeah.
I I think he is at the wrong club. I think there's no worse club to be in the world than Barcelona at this point of time. I'm sure there is mismanagement happening at all levels with talented players like him. But yeah, it was a weird signing to say the least. The fact that he was even coming to Brighton was a red flag in his trajectory as a player. For me, I think you guys called out two of the main ones that I wanted to talk about. Sofian Amrabat for me was the flop signing of the season. One, because he had a great World Cup and we were all like impressed by him in that campaign. And two, one major red flag was that there is a severe dearth of defensive midfielders all across the world. Everybody wanted to sign one, and yet nobody was touching Amrabat. I was wondering why that was happening, as to why nobody was going for him, considering the World Cup that we saw. And then United went for him, and then over the course of the season, we really saw why you shouldn't use an international club to judge whether a player is good or not for your team and for your league. I got reminded of the Salif Diao and El Hadji Diouf things that Liverpool tried to pull off under Houllier all those years ago after watching an international tournament. It was just so blatantly, abundantly clear that this guy is not at Premier League level. For a long time, I think it was shown more so because they had a bad season from a Casemiro point of view, so that was a little bit more pressure on the team and the squad. But everything that he did, it was like, okay, the guy can do certain things, he can do a decent job, but not at the level of which somebody like Manchester United would require. Nunes, another one, Matheus Nunes, I thought that, hey, am I missing something here? As in, he's a very talented player, high ceiling, but definitely didn't think he was Man City ready at that point of time. I was really fearing that shit, Pep has found out something that we all don't know and he's going to show what a great player is going to be. Schadenfreudenly pretty happy that it didn't work out, because Pep can't get everything right all the time. So happy about that. Just one last controversial one to throw in. I think Jeremy Doku. I think he's a fabulous player. Of course, one of the best dribbling wingers out there. But I feel like in all the big games that I watched, it was very easy to manage him. You just let him run as much as you can, and just keep him away from the slightly dangerous areas. It became a little too predictable to it was easy for teams to keep him away from the goal. And I thought that for Man City signing a player like that, it was going to be a real game changer, but it really wasn't. I don't think he made them any more dangerous than they have been in the past season. So that's a little bit of a disappointment for me as well.
Okay. And finally, for the surprise of the season, I'm going to go with, I would have preferred for this to be Luton, given what I already said earlier. Yeah, Bournemouth for me were the surprise of the season in the way that they pulled it off. An American owners being prudent and not firing managers middle of the season. So Bournemouth for me.
Could I interest you in a surprise of the season that you may not have thought about, Swag? What about Cole Palmer? Have you thought about that guy this so far?
Who's Cole Palmer?
I mean, Carlton Palmer. I apologize.
Carlton's brother. For me, the surprise of the season, firstly, I already spoke about Leverkusen, right? So Leverkusen winning was definitely a major surprise, especially with Kane signing for Bayern Munich. I thought that was like Bundesliga signed, sealed, and delivered. But Leverkusen turning up the heat was definitely a surprise. The other one is United winning the FA Cup was something I wasn't expecting, especially against City, especially after that game that they had against Coventry. It has been such a shit season, but United winning the FA Cup was definitely a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, for me, the big surprise was how bad United were during the season. We have talked about that in detail, but mainly going into the season, we thought Ten Hag is really an elite manager. All the things about Ajax seem to be true, like that he can build a new squad. He needs time, but he can build a new squad, and we didn't expect the systems to fail so badly. That's, I think, the alarming part. Of course, a lot of it is to do with the environment, which I was mentioning earlier, but I never expected United to be this bad, even with all the injuries and stuff.
Yeah, I think United were somebody I was thinking about as well for surprise of the season. I don't think any surprise of the season comes close to Jurgen Klopp suddenly announcing that he's no longer going to be the manager of Liverpool starting next season. I still remember so clearly where I was, what I was doing. I was at a Coldplay concert and just sitting down with my mouth open in absolute disbelief. All my Liverpool fan WhatsApp groups firing as to, hey, are we going to Liverpool? Let's book our tickets. Let's do it. There's no, we'll have to make it. A real earth-shattering news from a Liverpool fan point of view. So much so that we a bunch of us ended up spending small fortunes traveling from all over the world and going to Liverpool to witness the end of his reign at Liverpool. So yeah, big shocker, and it might end up becoming a very significant moment in our trajectory going forward as well. It like it's not easy and I think at times he and his ability made us papered over a lot of cracks, and we'll see if his successors can do something of that sort, but it's going to be very difficult, definitely more difficult than it was with him. So yeah, big shocker and big surprise for me.
All right. On that note, I think we'll close for today. And boys, you can go and watch Austria versus France. Let's see what this young chap called N'Golo Conte is made of. On that note, we'll close for tonight, listeners, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.